Hey guys, what's up? It's Ripe again. In today's video, my entitled neighbor Karen gets me towed from a public street for parking in front of her property. She claims to own the entire road and thinks that she is above everyone else. Here is what happened. Let's dive right into the stories. You know, I will never really understand people that just want to cause a disruption in other people's lives. The kind of people that get a kick out of being an a-hole for no reason. I mean, seriously, even at my angriest moments, I've never wanted to cause harm or be an inconvenience to someone else. Okay, maybe I have wanted to push buttons or something here or there, but I've never generally just wanted to be nasty to people. And yes, especially people I don't know. Well, apparently not all people in Serbia feel the same. This situation took place about 3 years ago, and to this day I still don't know what this particular Karen had against me. But damn, she really made my life a living hell. She totally had it out for me. Don't worry, I did indeed get my revenge, so you will definitely want to read until the end. Now, I lived in a pretty nice neighborhood. I mean, most of Serbia is pretty nice if we are being honest. Whether you live in an apartment or a house, most of the time the streets are big and wide, and because of this not only is there a lot of street space, but there's also a lot of sidewalk space. With the way our neighborhood was built, most lots had a back house behind them, except in this case they were considered separate property. The house across diagonal the street from me had a back house. It looked pretty beat up, and when I first moved in, I thought it was abandoned, but apparently some little lady lived there. And well, guess what? That little lady turned out to be my Karen. I was coming home from work one day, and as I am pulling up to my house, I noticed a car parked in the middle of the street. Now, like I said, the streets are pretty wide, but she was parked in such a way that I could not get my car past her. I pulled up as close as I could, and she was just standing outside of her car smoking a cigarette. I almost expected her to say hello to me when I rolled my window down, but instead she asked me where I was going. Me, to my house? I live on the street. Karen, oh yes? I have not seen you here before. Me, well, I have not seen you here before either, so... Karen, well, you cannot drive past this road. I own it. Huh? First of all, it's a public road. Second of all, even if it was a private road, she would have to know that people need to drive past it anyways because there is houses past this private road. And of course, she really did not like when I confronted her about that. She scoffed and threw her cigarette out and just drove away. If you're gonna try and make problems for people, at least make sense. Anyways, I pulled up into my driveway and got settled for the next. The next day, I went to talk to the neighbor that was in front of the beat-up house and told her what happened. Apparently, Karen used to live in this neighborhood, but she moved out because her house basically turned into a hoarder house. Although no one has ever been able to prove that, and it would be considered trespassing if we went to go look, the outside condition of the house led me to believe that it was most likely true. My neighbor said that when Karen actually lived in this neighborhood, nobody liked her. She would always complain about people parking in the street, but then if my neighbor parked in her driveway, she would complain that she was blocking the easement to the back house. Which, by the way, is actually untrue because there was a section of the driveway that was a lot wider in order to get to the back house. She was simply crazy. That's pretty much what I got from the conversation. And it looked like I was right because just a couple of days later, I was dealing with Karen again. I woke up one weekend morning and my car was getting towed. And guess who was standing out there smoking a cigarette and watching it all? Karen. Apparently she called the towing company because I was parked on private property. You mean the street lady? If it was private property, then why were all of these houses built on it? When I asked the tow truck driver how this was even possible, he let it slip that he did not really know what was going on and that he was Karen's friend. So basically he only towed my car because she asked him to. Oh, and his breath reeked of alcohol. So if Karen wanted to play this game, I would play it. Unfortunately for Karen, I had the money to get my car back and I had the time to waste. So what did I do? Well, first of all, I called the city and complained that the condition of the house was a safety concern. It seemed abandoned and I was not sure if anyone lived there, but if they did, I was concerned. That is what I told the city worker. Oh, and when I told my neighbor about it, she also called the city to complain of a terrible smell coming from the house. So not only were there now multiple complaints against her, And so the city did in fact come out to inspect the house, and they actually found that it is unsafe to live in. It was in fact a hoarder house, but there were multiple safety issues with the house itself. How bad do you neglect a house that is considered unlivable? I will never understand, but anyway, not only does Karen's house get demolished, but the neighbor was able to buy the piece of property that the abandoned house once sat on and made her property even bigger. Play with fire and you will get burned. And yeah, ripe stars, I gotta say, that story certainly took a quick turn. And I guess the laws in Serbia for housing safety must be pretty strict if it happens like this. However, then again, I can understand that because Serbia certainly has a lot of old houses and maybe they have to be extra careful. Anyway, the next one is titled Great Revenge. My mother, who I was very close with, passed away suddenly from COVID 3 days before Christmas last year in 2021. I live on the other side of the country and my brother lives on the other side of the state from where our mom lived, so we arrived the next day and stayed at her home, our former childhood home, simply to try and deal with everything surrounding a sudden death as well as take care of her cats. My father, we will call him S, has been estranged since I was about 12 years old and I have not spoken to him since then. He was not and is not a nice person, so I am definitely not missing out on anything. My parents never bothered to divorce. Why? Well, honestly, I have no idea, but onto the petty revenge. A few days after my mom passed away, I woke up around 11 AM due to being in a different time zone. My brother is still asleep as he works night shifts, this is relevant I promise, after my brief morning routine. I notice a police car in the driveway and head outside to find out what's going on. The officer asked if I lived there, so I explained the above story to him as to why I was there. At this point I had started crying, having to go through everything again. The officer then asked if I knew someone named S, which completely floored me. I told him yes I did, he's my father who I've not spoken to in over 15 years. The officer then tells me that S called the police saying that someone was trespassing on his property and wanted them out. The someone being my brother and I. Apparently S came to my mom's house early that morning and no one answered the door as we were both asleep. He assumed we were ignoring him and called the police. My brother has his number blocked, but he called and left a voicemail saying he would be back with the police to bust the door down. Which we heard later that day. Since my parents never divorced and my mom's will was almost 30 years old at this point, that meant that the house was legally his now. After the officer explained to me the situation, I see S pull in the driveway. The officer tells me that I did not need to interact with him at all and said I could wait inside while he spoke with him. S ended up giving us until the end of the day to leave the premises. So my brother and I, along with a couple of family members that lived nearby, helped us collect some of our childhood possessions and photo albums and then left. I flew home the next day. What S arrived to the next day, no he was there, he texted me asking where my mom kept her cash, was a disaster. My mom had 2 elderly cats that had issues with finding the litter box at times, so there was cat pee and cat poop scattered through the house that we did not bother to clean up. There was also decomposing food in the kitchen. A couch was overturned in the living room, we had to flip it to catch one of the cats, the trash had not been taken out for a while. There were also dirty dishes in the sink, and on top of that he now had a house with over 30 years of accumulated belongings that he now had to clean and empty by himself. My brother and I had planned on cleaning as well as we could, as well as start the process of preparing the house to sell, but thanks to S calling the police on us, that was now all his problem. He ended up sending my brother a letter through a family member complaining about how messy we left the house and how much money he had to spend to empty the property. It is shocking how actions have consequences. And the next one starts like this. For clarity, this happened a couple summers ago at the discount shop where employees wear red and you can always find us in the middle of nowhere or a rundown strip mall. And by the way, if anyone knows what kind of discount shop that is, please let us know in the comments. So either way, I was the only AM on staff because we were always short-staffed. Our system was updated and eventually AMs could not print off applications for our incapable GMs and I was bouncing between setting our display of summer decor as well as other tasks. I had opened the box with our cement garden birds, the really fat ones everyone has, and as was evidence from the crushed cardboards, our driver had crushed them during the delivery. I put them up on the shelf and threw away the demolished pieces. As the AM, I have sales floor privileges to use markdown with damaged stickers to adopt these rescues to a loving gardener. And now begins the scene. Our cast is me, ROB, rude old Karen, and I left my flock of injured rescuesome and fatbirds to go get the discount stickers. And before I ever get a chance to reprise them for the markdown in stomps, ROB, these birds are all broken. I was looking at the garden stuff and they are all broken. It's ridiculous you expect me to pay. I think it was $5. When this is the best looking one and his head is broken. 5 small green chips he literally could have fixed in school supplies were missing on the very top of his chubby head. She kept babbling for a little longer about how we are crooks and scammers for charging such a ridiculous price for a clearly defective product. I waited for the iconic, "So what are you gonna do about it?" and thrust the bird at me. Me kind of offended that she said so many mean things to a bird with a bad haircut when a summer before that I sold an alligator to a good home missing a whole front foot. Well, it's not his fault this happened. Our delivery drivers are very rushed people who are not gentle. Rob, I don't care about whose fault it is, I wanna know what you're going to do to fix it. Cue my malicious compliance. I suddenly remember how she was at one point scolding me because she doesn't even want the bird, he will make her garden ugly, she is only getting it because she feels owed a discount for seeing a broken bird without a discount sticker. Me? Well, I will make sure he gets a good home because you said you don't want him because he's broken, right ma'am? Rob, very suddenly confused and getting flustered. No, I wanna buy him. I just wanna know what you're gonna do to make it right with me about this. Me? Right, and you said he would make your garden ugly, so I should sell him to someone with an ugly garden that will think he is pretty. ROB growls and walks away. And the next one is titled, Karen does not care about others. So first off, for some context, I have terminal cancer in my spine and hip, so movement and traveling is very difficult for me. I am a bit of a clothaholic and often things are worn out once or twice before being sold on eBay, and also a bit of a fatty, a size 24. Clothing in this size, this fashionable, fun and affordable, is difficult to come by as much as places like ASOS and Amazon are not always selling these larger sizes and they are not always cheap. I've been selling on eBay for over 9 years and this is the worst choosing beggar I've ever come across. I posted 4 dresses, 3 tops, 3 bottoms, 2 pairs of sandals and 2 handbags. That haul would normally bring me around 100 to 150 pounds. Let's call the customer Karen, obviously, so she messages me about one of the dresses and asks me what is the minimum price I will accept. I tell her they are all on auction and she is welcome to bid. She tells me she cannot wait to bid as she has an event to go to that weekend. She tells me she is interested in all of my items and offers me £25 for the lot. One of the dresses alone cost me £75 and only been worn once. So I replied simply no, and she then proceeded to harass and beg me to sell her this one dress for £5, but I said no. She then again offered me £25 for the lot, as long as I was willing to deliver it to her about 40 miles from where I live, and again, I simply replied no. She then tells me that she is diabetic and cannot work, has 2 small children, and cannot afford to buy clothes in that size. I remember those kinds of acts, so being kind and generous, I agree to sell her the one dress for £25 and give her my PayPal info. She then sends me £2.50. I assume it's a mistake on her part and remind her the dress is £25. She then said, why can't I let her have it for £2.50? I clearly don't need the money and I know how hard it is to find larger dresses as I am obviously fat myself. Perhaps if I lost some weight I would be able to sell more clothes and would not have to charge so much. Bear in mind, she is the same size 24, so she then tries to guilt trip me by telling me that she is diabetic and that's why she cannot work. I tell her I sympathize, but the dress is £25 and she replies with, "You're a heartless bitch. You should let me have the dress for £2.50 because I was not gonna get a lot more for it than that anyway." However, the bidding of the dress is already at £17.50, so I say I'm sending you your £2.50 back. Good luck in the future. I then get an email from PayPal demanding a £25 refund on a dress that she has not even brought. Not only that, but she contacted eBay and told them I was a scammer. When I told her I had the whole conversation, that this is not what happened and I can prove it, she turned around and said, "I hope you get cancer and die." I then told her I already have terminal cancer and thanks. She then accuses me of lying for sympathy and demands her £2.50 plus interest back and the dress, or she is taking me to small claims court. Not only that, but apparently she knows me and knows where I live and will send her husband to beat the crap out of me and pick up the dress at the same time. I know this was really a long post, I apologize, but I literally had no idea what to reply to that. I was just gobsmacked. And yeah, ripe stars, as you can maybe tell, with Disney crying in the background, this is unfortunately the last story, but I gotta say, I love these stories from the Choosing Beggar subreddit. The next one is titled Black Friday Revenge. Background: I worked in the phone department at Worst Buy for about 3 years. I came from a Radio Shack before this job, so I knew how to sell phones. Over those 3 years, everyone I had started working with who already knew how to sell phones moved on to greener pastures. Before I knew it, 2 years in, I had trained everyone on the team how to sell phones, including my direct manager and assistant manager. It wasn't too bad, I liked the people I worked with. My manager basically made me the pseudo manager in his stead because he was not really willing to learn the intricacies of phone carriers. So I basically got the final call on how to handle difficult situations with customers or carriers. But then the penny dropped. I was conversing with a new coworker I trained, me, so how are you liking selling phones, buddy? Coworker, it's complicated and kind of hard. But at least now I see why we make what we do. Make what we do? Me? What do you mean, make what we do? How much are they starting you off at? Keep in mind, this is a brand new employee, it is literally his first job. Coworker, oh, $15 an hour. What? I was making only $14.50 per hour and I had already worked there for 3 years. And by the way, ripe stars, is it just me or is $15 an hour for selling phones quite a lot? Seems like a lot of money to me. So I immediately start looking into my job role. I found on the company website that the pay scale for my job role is $13 to $17 per hour in my area. The next day I ask my direct manager, he apologizes and explains that he doesn't get to directly change pay scales that much and that is a decision for the general manager. So I go to talk to the general manager. Me, hey GM, I was looking at the pay scale for my job and I wanted to see if we could raise my pay to the upper end of the pay scale, $17 per hour. Since I had been here for 3 years and have trained every one of my coworkers on how to sell phones despite that not being my job role. GM's eyes narrow. GM, OP, why don't you walk with me? Note, I'm not going to post the full conversation here because he spent the next 15 minutes walking me in a loop around the store, explaining to me that no, he would not give me that raise. Truth be told, I tuned out the majority of the conversation after that very firm no, but I did pick up the following excuses. Number 1, it was not in the budget. Number 2, I had not been at the store long enough. Number 3, that's not how it works. Number 4, it would not be fair to coworkers with the same amount of tenure. I was seeing red and very nearly quit on the spot, but my cooler head won. I'm not someone who's going to go out when there is such a prime opportunity coming up. You see, this conversation happened in late October. Now tell me class, what holiday comes next month? I start my job searching. Eventually I find another job selling phones for $17 an hour plus commission. By the way, that job sucked even worse, so don't sell phones, kids. I bide my time, and 15 days out from Black Friday, I walk up to the GM and hand him a note. GM, what is this? Me, it is my 2-week notice. GM, your 2-week notice? Me, yep. GM, 2 weeks from Black Friday? Me, 2 weeks from Thanksgiving actually, but who's counting? GM, He retreated into his office. I did not get the banging or panic that I was hoping for, but oh well, at least I'm getting out. The days roll by, I get more lax in my job, but still help my coworkers when they need it, because I loved all of them. 2 days before my last day, GM approaches me. GM, so OP, I was wondering, is there any way we can convince you to stay working here? Me? Probably not, but feel free to shoot your shot. GM, well, I was thinking about it and I think you are definitely worth that raise to $17 an hour that you were asking about. Me? Wow, how gracious of you, but I'm afraid you will have to do better than that. My next job is $17 per hour plus commission. GM, well, what could I do to keep you? Me, well, you could have appreciated the work I put in before I found a better paying job. GM, right. Fallout. Their mobile sales were a mess on Black Friday. While all of my coworkers that I taught were fully capable of selling phones by themselves, they would get confused or caught up on the intricacies of when things went wrong. If a phone got stuck in a port, if the wrong SIMs were scanned, etc., they relied on me for all of that. Most of the phones that ended up getting sold were sold to resellers and fraud customers, which causes chargebacks from the carrier. The mobile department had probably its worst month ever after I left. And yeah, Ripe stars, actually this story was from Tales from Retail, and I'm curious, have you ever worked in retail and had similar horror stories like this one? Or rather, horror bosses? Please let us know in the comments if you ever had similar experiences.